All right, awesome. So,
All right.
as I was saying, it's great to have brother Amunubenheh Brown, with us today with WAC TV, and we were just talking about having him on the show to spread his work to the younger generations and showing why he's a pillar of the community. And you were saying, brother?
Oh, I was saying, brother, that legacy is very, very important. Growing up in the era I did, I was born in I'm old compared to the young folk. I was born in 65. Putting it in perspective, the year I was born is the year we got the right to vote.
Hmm. Hmm.
Okay. So
Okay.
I'm in that generation that was experimented on, if you will.
Mhm.
Um, um, maybe later on in the interview, I'll go through the whole pedigree of that. But I understand how important legacy is, especially in our communities in Rochester or the Rock. I grew up in the arts, and Wayne, yeah, I know you're familiar with my mother, Almeta Whitis, who, her pedigree in Rochester, going all the way back to, when I was a kid, with the arts and cultures. I mean, without her, I wouldn't be doing all of this. I wouldn't have even continued to be doing what I do. But the legacy part is important because we our communities, to me, are under assault, and they have been for decades now. If that makes sense. I'm talking about not only physically, but psychologically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually.
I agree.
Right. And so that's what motivates me doing my work, Wayne. I'm pronouncing your name right, right?
It's one yay.
Wanye. Okay, see,
Yes.
okay, Wanye. Okay, almost like Kanye. Okay.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
okay. All right, Wanye. Okay. So, um, I thought years ago that, once I got into the arts and culture and meeting a lot of old heads back then in Rochester that were artists like painters, sculptors, poets, free thinkers, um, I mean, write, people who wrote plays and all that kind of stuff. I said, I want to do that. Now, when I was coming up, I grew up, the 19th ward. I grew up on 116 Wellington Avenue.
Okay.
I think
Shout
that
out.
right on the corner of Wellington and Kirkland. I think my mother said the house ain't even there no more. But right around the corner from 29 school. And 58 school was over there as well at that time. And everybody thought, oh man, this brother's corny, man. Brother all up into the arts and all of that, man. Oh, come on, bro. But then there were a lot of the brothers in the street that were like, yo, that's cool. They knew that I wasn't in the street, and they were like, yo, let that man do what he do. And
Right.
so, and here I am today. Yeah, legacy is very important, man, because without legacy, man, a people cannot survive.
Preach.
That's really what it comes down to. And so all I'm doing is playing my part. That's it. So,
I I I really like that you started off with expressing sort of your younger years and what kind of gotten you into being a creative and what was something that you can look back on from your younger years that inspired your art then that sort of brings into your work now?
oh, I got one specific one. As a matter of fact, I just posted a video of me
Okay,
singing a song that I wrote called Griot,
okay,
which was inspired from my mother was going to Brockport, um, back Brockport State University. I don't know if they still call it that, but I think Brockport is still there.
yeah.
But yeah, my mother was going to Brockport, and she was taking me to classes with her because, she couldn't afford daycare and everything. And my mother, she had me when she was 17, so she was still young, and I was kind of, you know. So she was the Black Student Union at the time put on a play called The Golden Stool.
Okay.
And The Golden Stool it was a play about it has to do with the Ashanti Empire in Ghana
Hmm.
and the foundation of it and how this king would come to unify the land and the Ashanti Empire would flourish and all of that. Um, my mother took me to it when I was, I don't know, man, I'm probably like 6, 7 years old.
Mm,
When I saw that, and I went to the rehearsals, and I went to the play. I was so inspired by what I saw, man. I mean, I'm 59 years old now. I'm about to turn 60, and I can still talk about it like it was yesterday. I said, that right there, that's what I want to do.
mm,
I mean,
powerful.
that was a seminal moment for me. And from there, there were other things, there were a lot of at that time, a lot of artistic things that were going on in the communities.
Mm,
The All of Us Workshop, which is now where Writers and Books is.
mhm,
Okay, but All of Us Workshop with Levon Shepherd, who is still, from what I understand, he's still a professor emeritus at what college is that? Not St. John Fisher. What college? Uh, just had a blank. But anyway, he's still around. He's in his
okay.
80s or
Right on.
yeah. So
Right
that was
on.
that was a seminal moment, but there were many, but that particular one is probably one of the first ones.
Okay. So hmm. So
And
initially you the first thing that you brought up was legacy.
yes,
And I agree with you that legacy is something that is extremely important in passing on to younger generations in your work from the pieces that I've had the honor to read in both uh, excuse me, Jonah,
Jonah Wade, spotlight on Jonah Wade.
Spotlight
Yeah.
on Jonah Wade, as well as Face of Death.
Yeah.
Your work, um, it reminds me of. Uh, have you ever heard of the writer Kafka? What's his first name? Uh,
Mm.
so
Uh,
so. Uh, excuse
is he
me.
like a is well, I'm just by the name Kafka, is he like a Polish writer, Russian writer, something like that?
He's a German Franz
German.
Kafka. Uh,
Okay,
he's actually
I've heard of
so
him.
your writing sort of symbolizes or kind of reminds me of Kafka's work in the sense that you speak on our mortality and our existence within this reality and our yeah, our
Yeah,
mortality
yeah.
and what do you feel um is the biggest influences of that perspective on your life? Do you feel like it's age, or do you feel like it's something that you find a fascination from in general?
Well, I'm glad you asked that question because for some reason I was thinking about that. But that's the universe working. I
Mhm,
I I go back. I've always been fascinated with the notion of mortality. What
mhm,
comes after? What energy, what entity or great mystery made all of this possible and
mhm.
why? And that's, if you see in my background, that is, can't see his face, but that is the Kemetic god Ptah or Ptah.
Okay. Hey,
That he is my muse when it
okay.
comes. Yeah, it's my spiritual muse, and the goddess Sekhmet is also, so that whole Memphis triad thing. I'm a Kemite. I consider myself a Kemite, but that's a whole nother thing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Um, I've always felt like the mortality and why we are born to die, there's an urgency in our lives to explain why that is. I just one of the videos on my Blazing Concepts channel from a story I wrote called Enigma, where I talk about Loki, the
Mm,
Norse god. And
mhm,
he is doing, and it's all about him, not about his powers and, I'm Thor. No, it has to do with his esoteric journey, his inner journey of why he is what he is, and understanding that at some point Ragnarok will come and everything will disappear and have to be reborn again.
mm.
And he talks about this. He talks about his mortality, and he's a god.
Right.
So I guess what I'm saying is that I've always been fascinated by this notion of our physical mortality because our spiritual life goes on and on. We're like energy. Energy is never created nor destroyed.
Mhm.
So I just start from there. Now, when you read, I guess you read Death Face,
Mhm.
and Death Face is from a perspective of a 68-year-old Jewish man. Now,
Mhm.
if you notice in a lot of my work, I don't just most a lot of my subjects aren't just black subjects. I try to go around the world. I try to bring different characters from different cultures and different lifestyles to because I just think that that's important as a creator, not to be one trick pony. So in this particular case, Zachary Ruda is the protagonist who is approaching his mortality. He's 68. He's at this time, he's sick. He's an actor, and he's wondering, he's pondering what is it going to be like in his next life. And then because he's Jewish, he goes back into his grandparents being victims of the Holocaust, and so he has this fear of death. And then he meets this I call it a Rasputin type character, Barnabas Sankum, who is his theatrical agent. And he, basically he gets him he procures a role for him, which, as you read the script, at the end, he finds out that Barnabas is Anku. For those who know anything about medieval lore, Anku is a servant of death. Not
Mhm.
death itself, but the servant of death. And that particular entity is preparing him for his next role, which is in his next life. So yeah, I've always been fascinated by that.
Okay. So I actually kind of wanted to go off that because I personally also believe in reincarnation and past lives. Um,
Hmm.
what do you feel like uh, have you brought in from your past lives into this lifetime? Do you feel like is coming out in your work?
Oh, oh man, Wanya, you and I are like on the same universal wavelength or something because you touching into all. I've only been interviewed twice before,
Okay.
uh, but this whole the way and the questions you're asking are
Hmm.
so on point.
Okay.
It's almost like I knew you. I don't know if that makes any sense. Like somewhere else, it's like we're talking about the past lives and everything. I don't know, but let me. I digress. But let me get back on this.
No, you're
Uh,
fine.
yeah. Um, um, I have always. I remember my mother took me to get a reading from the Divine Inspiration Church on Appleton Street. Appleton and what street was that? Man, my mind's blank. But anyway, on over in 19th Ward on Appleton Street, uh, there was a little church, Divine Inspiration, and it wasn't like a Pentecost. It was more like a universal type of
Okay.
unity church.
Spiritual truth. Okay.
Right, spiritual church. And that's where and my spiritual mentor was a wonderful woman named Reverend Marion Newby, rest in power. And so I was there and my mother paid for a reading for me. And the lady said to my mother, she says, "Your son is an old soul. He's been around for thousands of years. This is like he's been here for many carnations." And she said one in particular was, get this, that I was a French nobleman slash artist during the storming of the Bastille in France.
Ooh.
And yeah, this is what she said. I was 11 years old. And she says, during that time, I was a well-known artist in the French court.
Hmm.
And something happened where this woman that whoever it is I was in love with,
Mhm.
she was killed or something like that. I was so distraught during the whole the changeover and everything that I threw myself in the Seine River and I died.
Hmm.
I said, "Oh," kind of explains some things about my fear of water and all that kind of stuff. But anyway, I guess what I'm saying is that I have stories that talk about past lives and how, we bring certain things into this life. And I believe, honestly, and just to really just kind of encapsulate this answer, I believe that everything that I'm doing artistically is coming from my past life. And I believe that I originated my first lives were in ancient Egypt. No doubt about that. I have no doubt about that because I have such a strong affinity and connection to Kemet. it's been with me. I can't shake it. And so everything I do kind of emanates out of that.
I love that answer. It actually got me thinking about because I've been hanging with your mother
Hmm.
quite a lot lately. She is working on her own uh, biography of some sorts. It's not necessarily officially that, but in her writing, in one of the chapters, it brings up sort of our existence as the spirit before we decide on where we're going to reincarnate on this plane.
Yep.
And you happen to be one of those individuals that decided to choose your mother, Almeta.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yep.
who is also a very fascinating, creative,
Hmm.
amazing writer. Um,
Cheers.
I can see that. Sort of going back to your wanting to uh, involved not only just your current identity as a black man, but the identities of others in your writing.
Yeah.
Do you feel like that is something not only intentional, but you feel like that's something that is needed for everyone to sort of gravitate towards your work? Or what do you feel is a greater purpose of
Well, I think first and foremost that the work I do has to it has to serve our people. You have to you at first. I mean, you have to as there's a saying that I coined. I should trademark it decades ago, where and I say it in a lot of especially the songs and the spoken vignettes. I always say going back to the womb. I
that?
Yeah, and so we have to start there with our people first because
Mhm.
first and foremost, I am a black man.
Right.
And so everything I do, even though all of, like the totality of my work encompasses a lot of different things that celebrate other cultures, first and foremost, it comes from, it's almost like this, Wanye, it's like this. Every person that walks this earth, we all have a common ancestor,
Mhm.
and she is from Mother Africa, period.
Mhm.
Okay, so that's kind of what I'm saying. So really, if you think about it, we are all children of that one mother. And so that's what I keep in mind when I create all this. And, and there's people over the years, and especially in Rochester, which has been kind of disappointing for me, that, there are some folks who are like, oh, yeah, man, he's writing about all this and that, but he ain't keeping it real with just this. I'm like, look, that's not the purpose of what we do.
Mhm.
As an artist, I create what comes to me.
Mhm.
And so and that it's all good. Now, I could sit here and I mean, I'm not trying to knock like someone like Tyler Perry or something like that, but my thing is that those kinds of themes you can only do that so many times. And
Exactly.
I don't think it serves the greater good of our people. Okay, let's look at it like this, artistically. Black folk, we invented, funk, R&B, hip hop, but we also rock and roll, blues, jazz, bluegrass. We've done it all. So
Yeah.
all of these other art forms emanate out of what we've done. Even the ancient temple systems. I mean, we can go back to ancient time. Man, we are the people that everything else emanated from. So all I'm doing is just mimicking that in this lifetime, in this life's
Mhm.
journey that's all I'm doing. And so, sometimes I get a little disappointed, man, when, folks like, oh yeah, man, well, why you need more about okay, yeah. Can I write stuff about, what it's like in the street? Yes, I got a piece called The Deep Blue Crucible, where I talk
Mhm.
about five brothers growing up in Rochester, trying to survive the system, the police and everything, and all the while trying to elevate themselves.
Mhm.
I know that because I lived it, right? I also got Spotlight on Jonah Wade, which you mentioned earlier, which is about a man, and it takes place in Rochester on a
Mhm.
rooftop apartment where he is contemplating suicide because of being young and black in Rochester in the 70s, in the
Mhm.
80s, right? So I have those stories. Wanya, I have those. But I also am an observer of others.
Mhm.
And what, like I said, like Deathface was from a Jewish perspective. Why? Because I went to Brighton, right? And I learned a lot about their culture
Mhm.
and everything. And I'm a sponge. I'm like, oh, okay. Same thing with indigenous America, same thing with parts of Europe, same things with Asia. I
Mhm.
mean, yeah. So yeah.
I really respect that perspective because I am someone who is very similar in that regard, where I've been around a lot of different cultures throughout my life.
Hmm.
I've had parts of my life where I grew up in Rochester. I've also grew up in Arizona, where I was around a lot of Mexicans, even here in Rochester, I was around a lot of Puerto Ricans, but as I've gotten older, I've managed to be around a lot of different cultures from around the world, and I feel like what you're touching on is something that is very important in acknowledging that, we all are from one source,
Yes. Yeah.
at the end of the day, even if we don't, see it, we're all from that one place that comes from some part of the universe that somehow sparked and created all of this. And I think back to something I was studying recently during my own time, where spirituality in Rochester was actually something that was discovered.
Hmm.
And I think, there's something here in Rochester that a lot of people don't really understand the power and the spirit for why a lot of people gravitated towards here. Um,
Yep.
and I think what is something that you may want to provide, or what is an aspect of this next upcoming generation that you feel like you see now that they're growing older, that you feel like they should learn about certain dynamics of how we should function in society? That
Well, yeah. So touching on the Rochester spirituality, Rochester in the upstate New York area has a rich history of spiritual movements and
Mhm.
spiritual frequencies. I'll just put it like that. There's a lot of that up there. I
Mhm.
mean, and so I think that number one, our young people should tap into that knowledge by learning about it and acknowledging that and then going from there. Whatever it is, there's a line that's in one of my poems. I think it's Cubes and Circles from my harvest season book of poetry, where I say that which makes us blissful is the path that fits. So what there is no one way to do
Mhm.
anything. There is whatever it is in your heart,
Mhm.
whatever it is that you are feeling genuinely, follow that because you are playing a role. Just like I play a role with what I do, doesn't make me, I'm not in competition with other artists and other creators and everything like that. I would love to collaborate. I mean,
Mhm.
it's same thing in Rochester. That's what I've been trying to do for a decade since I've been gone.
Mhm.
The last time I lived in Rochester was in 2014. Um, but everybody kind of like, I want, well, I want my. That's not what this is about. What
Mhm.
this is about is to join forces, to collaborate and create something, become part of what I call the energy. And for
Mhm.
young people, I wrote an essay in my book of poetry called The Harvest Season, why I called it the energy. And I wrote it when I was 21 years old.
Mhm.
And I was talking about this, what we're talking about right now. So now this is like 3 decades, almost 4 decades later. Um, it is young people have to understand we cannot compete against each other. It's not a competition. It's not about getting mine. It's not about, being gangster and all this stuff. All of this stuff has been spoon-fed to us to to bring out the lesser of ourselves. I'll give you an
Mhm.
example about hip hop. Hip hop, which is now the most popular culture in the world,
Mhm.
and I know what I'm talking about because I was part of the early era of what the hip hop culture was supposed to be. As a young teenager in Rochester back in '79,
Mhm.
I was working at the McDonald's on West Main, right there where Fight Square. I don't even know if it's is. I definitely don't. I don't think it's still there anymore. West Main, right over there near the Inner Loop. There used to be a McDonald's right there, and Fight Square used to be the projects right there. I used to work there during, my ninth grade through 12th grade, right? And working there, um, um, wait a minute, I just lost my train of thought. What was I talking about before that? There was a point I was trying to make. Um, what was the question again? Then it'll come back to me.
What is something that you feel like the generation should learn? You were talking about competition,
Oh, yeah,
and
yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay,
the
hip hop. Okay, yeah,
yeah.
the hip hop thing. In 1979, 78, 79, that's when hip hop first started hitting Rochester. And me and my
Mhm,
brother were B-boys, right? And so
mhm,
when I was working at this McDonald's, there was these two brothers that lived on Reynolds, right behind there. One, his name was Bill Blast, and the other brother was Grandmaster Funk. They were
mhm.
both from New York City, and
Okay.
and so I learned the whole hip hop thing through them. And then the whole culture, and then WRUR was the only radio station at that time at University of Rochester was playing the hip hop music, and it was considered underground. Okay,
Mhm,
so now we'll fast forward now to what hip hop is now. Hip hop, what it is now, is not what was intended. So
mhm,
what happened was somewhere in the 80s, mid 80s, late 80s, we have NWA, we have all these groups coming in where they started pushing the gangster, you
mhm,
know, bitches and hoes and and all this kind of stuff. And that's when I got off the train because I knew what was going on. So this whole thing, with where the young people are now and this whole mentality it's going to take a while to reverse this.
mhm,
And so that's one of the things that I'm wanting to do with my craft and being a contributor to turning this around. So, I've carefully crafted certain, you know, uh, uh, stage pieces. A Gift from a Stranger, which was just put on. My mother just put that on. It was a stage play put on last year at Muck.
okay.
And it takes place in Rochester at the sweet shop on the corner of Thurston and Chi-Li. I think
Mhm,
it's Thurston and Chi-Li. Thurston Road and Brooks. Thurston and Brooks.
okay.
Okay, and so and it has to do with a woman, Serena Domino, who's getting ready to go out and kill people. I mean, literally, she's a budding serial killer, and she goes into the sweet shop to ask for directions. Long story short, she goes in and meets Reginald Franklin, who's the sweet shop owner, black man, older black man, blah blah blah. He's the one who deters her from. He stops her from becoming a killer, brings her into the community, and she ends up staying there and becoming a vibrant part of the community. That's just the overview of it. But that's what I mean by taking some of the anger and the perpetuation of violence and just, oh, I'm going against my brother and that, he ain't my brother, man. That brother, he from another hood, bro. Yada yada yada, woody woody woo. All that is designed to keep us from what we were intended to be.
Mhm,
So if that makes any sense. And so I'm really passionate about this, Wanye, because I've seen it. I've seen it in my generation, and I'm seeing it in the generations now. And the music, um I mean, even like the movies, everything has been dumbed down, watered down, and the whole um I hate using it like this, the whole nigga mentality, man.
mhm,
I'm just keeping it 100, okay? For someone like me in an older generation, man, it breaks my heart, man. It really does.
mhm,
Because you know we are we are we have I'm speaking from the heart right now. We have generations of us, man, that bought in and took that pill, man, and it's like this is our culture. No, it is not. Hip hop, first of all, true hip hop is
mhm.
not what you see now.
No.
Hip hop was never intended to be mainstream. I can tell you that because I know I was there.
Mhm.
It was never meant to do all this.
No.
Now, it was meant to be underground and to permeate into different oppressed people from around the world, like Zulu Nation, African Bambaataa and the Zulu Nation. That was my thing, right? Zulu Nation is really big in Japan and in
Hmm.
Asia, huge, you know. But that's how it was supposed to be, underground, with the people, not
Right.
selling a whole bunch of records in the record companies and then them saying, "Oh, let's go ahead and push this gangster move. Let's go do all this," and then all that does is help us to perpetuate violence among us and our own people.
I
That's what I
I
think.
I agree because originally there was five pillars in hip hop from what I remember, which was the MC, the DJ,
Yeah,
breakdancing, graffiti,
graffiti.
education. You
Yes,
know,
and then
edu
and the tenets were peace,
hmm
unity,
hmm
love, and
Yep.
having fun. That was from Zulu Nation. Oh yeah, that. So you're right on point with that.
Exactly, because like those pillars were supposed to uplift the community. Sort of, it was inspiration from things like the Black Panthers.
Yep.
Things like the '60s movement of civil rights. And like you said, it down along the way it got hijacked
Yes,
by
it did.
the mainstream media and those in power who seek to control us. What is uh any advice that you think you can give to young leaders who are willing to change the perspective of the young, so we don't continue on the cycle that we're happening to be on right
Well, Wanye, really, I mean, we have to. I'm gonna going back to the womb. I'm telling you, man, I gotta trademark that. But I think we need to do this, and we have to be brave enough to do it. Meaning that these young leaders out here have to be willing to take the ridicule at first
now. Hmm.
and the criticism. Because remember, we have a generation of young folk who believe that this culture that is being perpetrated as Black culture is not true Black culture. It has become part of our our culture because we created it, but it's been bastardized because of other people, and then they're using that to say, look at these niggas over here. See that's their culture right there. No,
Hmm.
it's not. So as young Black leaders, I would say you have to brave the ridicule and the stigma. I go back to El Hajj Malik Al-Shabazz, better known to the world as Malcolm X. I read the autobiography when I was 20 and it changed my life. Okay, Malcolm, when he joined the Nation of Islam and he went down, he was perfect, doing everything that they wanted him to do. Once he went to Mecca, when he went there and saw that there were flaws in what he was being taught, he he changed in the public and said, "I am now going to reverse course and I'm going to start all over. I'm going to create this whole new thing where I'm going to include all other types of people because I realized that the Muslims weren't just Black."
Hmm.
He was killed for that.
Hmm.
Uh, there's a lesson in that. Now, I'm not trying to make that extreme the example, but what I'm saying is, metaphorically, is sometimes you have to, these are certain sacrifices that, not the physical get killed, but the the
Sacrifice.
sacrifice of whatever that is has to be made. Like for me, I mean, hey man, I'm 60 years old, or I'm getting ready to turn 60 in January, and I have people telling me over the decades, yo man, you know, your craft and how you do it, whether it's your writing, whether it's you performing, whether it's you doing all, man, you could have been a star, man, you could have been bigger than Tupac, you could have been bigger than this person as a writer, you could have been this. Yes, that is true. But I made choices along the way to not sell my soul, if you will.
Hmm.
There's been many times over, when I was younger where I could have went a whole different way with what I do because folks were like, hey man, you could be a star, you could do this, you could do that. When I was in Arizona, when I lived in Phoenix and I had my band out there knee deep back in the early 2000s, they were trying to sign me to a label, doing all that. And I was like, no, I want to keep doing what I do.
Hmm.
And so, yeah, so in other words, you got to make these choices. What is more important to you? Is it more important to go out there and become a TikTok star
Mhm.
and shuffling and jiving and do whatever you got to do that and get the attention and the accolades with that? Or would you rather build something meaningful and something that is going to be lasting and positive and something that people will talk about 100 years from now? That goes back to your original question of legacy.
Mhm.
This is what I'm talking about. And this is what I've done with my work. And, my mom and I, we talk every week. I call her every weekend. And then, matter of fact, she called me right before I got on with you.
Mhm.
I said, and she understands she's my mother. She understands full well. My mom tells me all the time, I wish that you get your flowers, my son, before you pass away. I said, I hope so too. Because I'm not tooting my own horn,
Yeah.
Wanye, but I have some brilliant shit. I got stuff that I haven't talked about yet. I got stuff that
No,
people,
absolutely. Like
I
I've
ha
seen some of it, and I
yeah,
agree with you. And I'm definitely trying to be here to make sure that you are able to get your flowers while you're still here. You know.
yeah. And I counted, the other day I was sitting there, I said, you know what? Let me, I just gonna just take a count of all of the work that I've done up to this point. And since I would say 20 years old
Mhm.
until now, I counted. I looked on my files in my computer. I have Wanye. Okay, hold on to your hat.
Mhm.
I have 45 different franchises that I've created from 45.
Okay.
45. I was like, whoa. I mean, I was like, that means screenplays, stage plays, vignettes, books of poetry,
Mhm.
songs. Yeah, all of it. And I'm like, whoa, I've been blessed. That's why this this netter is behind me. The
Yeah.
netter ta pata, or some people pronounce it pata, but ta pata.
Mhm.
Because early on when I was in my 20s, that's where my name Abunubenheh comes from.
Mhm.
Abunubenheh, I adopted that name when I was about, I wouldn't say about 25. It literally means hidden gold of eternity. If you break it down in Medu Neter,
Mhm.
Amun is the hidden one, that which is hidden, which is a term for God. That's where the Muslims get Amin. That's where Aman, it all comes from the Amun, the hidden one. And
Uh,
then you have, yeah,
don't mean to stop your
yeah,
cut wisdom, but we got less than a minute.
okay.
Where can the people find you, brother man? So they can share love and see your work.
Well, they can go to YouTube.
Mhm.
I have the Blazing Concepts channel. You can see, different snippets of my work there. I'm on Facebook
Mhm.
as Abenubene Brown, not Christopher Brown. So, I mean, if you type in Abenubene Brown Facebook, you'll find me. You can touch base with me there. Um, yeah, I'm not on Twitter
Okay.
or anything like that, but those two sources are the best way